Hi folks, I'm here with your Pro Tools Fundamentals 110 Exercise 1 video tutorial, which is input, output, setup, workflows. So in this one, we're going to be a lot of setting up our I/O and kind of arranging how sound is heard and how signal is routed within a session. And for this exercise, you need to create a new session from scratch. We're going to be choosing it from local storage. They ask that the create from template is unchecked. File type should still be WAV. Bit depth should still be 24-bit. Sample rate should be 48 kilohertz. The I/O setting should be stereo mix, and the interleaved boxed should be checked. And here they'll want us to also give it a name that's as descriptive as possible. So because we're doing from scratch, I'm going to have to type this in. And now I've given it the title that they've requested and a name and a date. And then we can go ahead and click Create Session. Part 2 of the exercise is customizing an I/O setup. And it says that we've created a session with no tracks, but that's not a problem for what we're going to do, which is create a customized I/O setup. So then we're going to go to the Setup tab in the top of our screen. We're going to go to the I/O Setup dialog box. And they say to go to the Input tab, which is the first one on the top left. Go ahead and click that and click the Default button to reset that to the default. Same thing on the Output tab, reset that to the default. In my case, this was already done. And then choose the output path connected to our speakers as the monitor path and audition path. And that's going to be in the bottom right-hand corner. And we're just going to choose the audition path and the monitor path as output 1s and 2s. Once again, this was already there in my session. It might be the same way for you. In the bus tab, they want you to select all buses, and they want you to actually go ahead and delete them. So we're actually going to choose the delete path option from all of these buses that we have, and we're basically starting our bus tab from scratch. They want us to create the following buses for use in one operation. So we're going to create a stereo path named main mon. So we need to go ahead and do new path. So we're going to make a stereo path called main mon. The second one we need to do is a stereo path named QMix. We then need to create 5 stereo paths named subgroup bus. So I'm going to create 5 stereo, and we're going to call them subgroup bus. We also need to create 1 stereo path named reverb bus. And last, we need a stereo path named delay bus as well. And then it says for the purpose of this exercise, you don't need to create the subpaths, so you don't need to check this box, and then you should be good. They then want us to assign the main mon bus to the output path assigned to our monitor speakers. So what we're going to do is go ahead and assign the main mon. Just by checking this box, it's going to map it to output 1s and 2, and that way the main mon is going to be our main output. It does say that if you have an interface with more than 2 outputs, you can assign the QMix bus to another available stereo output. I don't, so I'm not going to be doing anything with the QMix just yet. They do want you to assign your default output bus to be main mon for both mono and stereo tracks. So here we have our default output bus, and I'm going to click that, and then under the mono part, I'm going to set that to our main mon, and we're also going to do that for stereo tracks as well. So for stereo, the default output will be main mon. Then it says click the OK button and the changes will be applied to the session. Then we're actually going to go ahead and save the session and then actually move on to the next step of the exercise. Part 3 of the exercise is exporting I/O settings. And it says that now that we've saved our changes in the I/O setup dialog box, we need to now export them. So we're going to go to the I/O setup dialog box again. We're going to click the export settings, which is going to be down here in the bottom left. And it says that the browser window that opens will display the default location of Pro Tools I/O settings. Settings that are saved here will be available from the I/O settings pop-up menu when creating a new session. Since this exercise is only a simulation of a workflow, let's not save it there. Instead, we're going to navigate to the folder that we were using for this session. So I'm going to go back to my Documents tab, and I'm going to go to the folder where I have this session file saved, and then I'm actually going to save it in the folder for this exercise. And then they ask us to name it I/O settings for import. And once you're done with that, you're going to click the save button. And then it wants us to close the I/O setup dialog box. Part 4 of the exercise is importing I/O settings. So what we need to do is open a session, but we're actually going to open a session in that folder that we actually hadn't started the exercise with. So I'm going to go to File, Open, and I'm going to be navigating to the folder we were in. Right from the get-go, they want us to do a file save as, and they want us to go ahead and add our name and date to the session. And once we've gone ahead and done a save as there, we want to use the I/O setup dialog box and go to the bus tab. So we're going to go to the setup, I/O, and we're going to the bus tab. It says make sure that the apply to all tabs box is unchecked. So you want to make sure that right down here where it says apply to all, make sure that is unchecked. Click the import settings button. So now we're doing the opposite of what we just did in the previous part of the exercise. They now want us to navigate not from this I/O settings folder where all of the Pro Tools settings were saved. We want to go to that folder where this particular exercise was, where we just saved it. So now I'm going back to that same folder, and this is the input output file that I just exported before. So it's now here. We're going to be opening it and bringing it in, and we can see it brought in all of these buses that we just made previously. It might ask us if we want to delete any unused buses. It didn't do that for me, but if it does, you're supposed to click yes. The pre-existing buses will be removed, and we're now going to click OK. And then we need to assign the output of all tracks to the main mon output bus. So now that I'm in this session, we need to go and change the outputs of all these 4 tracks. And the easiest way to do that is to make a selection. So using the Shift key, I'm making a selection, and then once again holding Shift and Option for all selected. I'm going to, while holding the Shift and Option keys, go to the output, and we're going to change this to the main mon. And because I had this all selected, it changed the outputs of all of these tracks all at once. Part 5 of this exercise is setting up a cue mix. So from the File menu, we're going to go ahead and open up an additional session. So we're going to go ahead, I'm going to save this, and now we're going to open another session. In that same folder we were before, you'll see there's a cue mix session that we haven't yet opened today. So we're going to go ahead and open that up. Right off the bat, they once again want us to do a save as and give our name and date to it. Once we've done that, they want us to notice that in the mix window, we'll see the same tracks that we used before assigned to the main mon output bus. You'll also see the sends above each track, which are these up here. And you should notice that they're currently sent to the cue mix, which is currently inactive. This is the send that we'll use to create a separate mix for our performer, but we'll want to hear out of our 4 control room monitors first so that we can set things up. So we're going to go back to the I/O setup dialog box. And in the bus tab, we're going to temporarily deactivate the main mon path. And the way you do this simply by on the main mon bus pathway, we're just going to deactivate it, and it's no longer active. And then we want to map the cue mix bus to the path that is connected to our monitor speaker. So right now it says aligned 3 to 4, path not available. In this case, we're going to be changing it to our output main mon speakers. So now the cue mix is what's going to be currently mapped to our main output monitors. It says to click the OK button, and it says now when we play our session, we won't hear anything, and that's because the send levels here are currently all set to negative infinity. So what we're going to do is we're going to change the level of these sends to determine what we want to be actually sent to this cue mix, this hypothetical cue mix that we're building. So if I play my session from the top, I'm actually not going to hear anything right away. You'll see that in the main meters on these tracks, there's sound there. There should be things coming out, but right now, because the main mon output bus path is inactive and not mapped to any speakers, we're not hearing anything. But I can mix these levels up here because the cue mix is currently set to our main mon output bus. So there's the piano, guitar, bass, and drums. So that's how I know that the Q mix is properly routed to my output monitors, because when I change the Q mix levels on these sends, I am able to change the mix accordingly. And then they would want you to build a hypothetical mix that you would use for the performer for the Q mix. It says once you're happy with your mix, you'll want to change your bus settings back to what they were before in the I/O setup dialog box. So now we're going back to our I/O setup. They want us to reactivate the main mon path. So the main monitor pathway, I'm going to reactivate. It's still going to output 1 and 2. They then want us to reassign this to another output path that we would be using for the headphones mix. Now, with the interface I currently have here right now, I don't have a second output, so I'm not going to be able to do this. If you're in the same boat, I'll show you a workaround where you can test it. But they would want you to really send this to a different output so you could hear the different outputs in conjunction with the main monitor outputs. If you want to do a workaround, if you only have one output like me, the easiest way to do this is to actually leave them both to outputs 1 and 2. And then you can just adjust the individual send levels accordingly. So for example, if I mute every send on the Q mix, I'll still hear these faders, these meters coming out through my main monitors. And I can mix them accordingly. And if I also wanted to test the Q mix, I can just mute all of these. And then if I unmute these sends, if I also make the Q mix sends pre-fader, meaning it doesn't really care whether these are being muted or not. If I make all of these pre-fader, I can hear these sends separately from this. So I can still use these faders. And then vice versa, I can mute these and unmute these. And that way I can hear the different levels. And you would have to imagine right now they're coming through the same set of speakers in my case. But if you had a different output, you could map these to 2 separate outputs and then hear the different mixes accordingly. One for you in the control room and the other for a hypothetical performer for their Q mix. And that completes this exercise. I hope you found this video helpful with setting up your I/O workflow.